everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Final Down NFL podcast with me, Jim, Punk Raider, Denver Dave, and Finn. We're to talk about NFL, boys. How are we doing?
Yahtzee.
Go on. Nice to have a full house.
Nice. Dave, say something.
Hello. I think this is the first time all four of us have been together, isn't it? I think they've been
I've definitely not
many
been
incarnations. But...
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Wow.
Crew. I've been a bit of a middleman up until this point.
You have, man. You have. How blessed is the listener to get us all in one place at the same time?
All one of them, yeah? The single listener.
How dare you, Punk? We have listeners.
Well, that's what you said. You
what did I say?
It was the listener. You said the listener.
Did I say? I meant plural.
You did.
I meant the
there
royal.
Are many listeners.
The royal there.
We are heard far and wide, as our iTunes reviews will attest to.
Exactly. So we are going to be talking today about the NFC West. We have done the AFC Autopsy series. Go back and check that out at thefinaldown.com or patreon.com/finaldown, where you can access all of those on there as well for free. Before we do the review, Punk, you have a quick word for Foster Moreau. Obviously, some pretty terrible news as he was getting a medical at the Saints for a move. Diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Times like this, football stands by the wayside. I'm sure even Denver Dave will wish Foster Moreau well, 100%. And hope he kicks cancer's ass. Obviously, but anyway, look, Foster Moreau, much love to him. Really good tight end. Definitely needs all the love and support he can get. So, hope he kicks its ass and comes back healthy, fit soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a weird sort of way, probably glad that they found it when they did, because they found it early, and it's a good job that he was, a free agent, because they gave him a full medical. Found it early, and hopefully he'll be back soon, not playing for the Raiders or the Chiefs.
Yeah, but fingers crossed it's all okay. Obviously, we have other players that have been through that and still able to play. So advancements have been made, and fingers crossed for Foster, it's not the end of his career. And he goes on to live a full and healthy life. So, yeah.
Yep.
And, of course, we now need to look at the NFC Conference. And we're going to start with the Western Division, because we started with the West with the AFC, so it seems only fair to keep it symmetrical. If you don't know by now, guys, we do it with a 5-minute chunk. We start at the top team, work down to the bottom. And I've got the 5-minute timer right here, so stand by your beds, guys, because we're going to start with the first team in the NFC West this season, and that was the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers had, for the most part, a great season, a bit of a rocky start, sitting at 3-4 with a new starting quarterback, Trey Lance, already done for the year with a broken leg. The Niners decided to push on and traded for Christian McCaffrey. It worked, and they won the next 12 games, despite also seeing Jimmy Garoppolo go down too and having to start Brock Purdy. The fact that he too got injured in the championship game gives the Niners a very good excuse why they can go again next year with scary offensive weapons and a league-leading shutdown defense. Best game of the season, they swept the entire division. They took apart most teams that had to face them. It might look lazy, but the divisional win over the Cowboys, though only a 19-12 win, was just a dominant performance from the Niners. They only scored one touchdown with a Christian McCaffrey rushing score, but they picked Dak twice in the first half and ended with that hilarious final Cowboys play. Worst game of the season, if we rule out the championship game, as they ended with no quarterback, there were only 4 losses to pick from. Both worst ones came with Jimmy Garoppolo as the quarterback. They lost 11-10 to the Broncos, a giveaway in the third quarter. And they also got beaten by the Falcons after pulling back a 14-point deficit, only to concede 2 more touchdowns against Marcus Mariota. So, guys, talk to me about the 49ers. How happy are they right now?
I think they're lamenting what could have been somewhat. Let's be honest, if Purdy hadn't gone down in that championship game, they possibly might have snuck their way into the Super Bowl.
Maybe.
I think they can be overall happy with their season, though. I mean, at the end of the day, they've used a third-string quarterback. They've proven that the system works. Their defense was great once they'd figured out those kind of defensive backfield issues in the first couple of games. They had loads of injuries, but next man up was definitely a thing in San Francisco. I think offensively, it proves the system works. I don't think they're going to get a million miles away from it in the future. The question will be really for next season for me is, can Jim's ridiculous pick of Justin Field being a top 5 quarterback in the NFL actually come true with him throwing the ball?
It's got nothing to do with the San Francisco 49ers.
I don't mean Justin Field, do I?
What
I mean Trey Lance.
Trey Lance
coming off his injury.
Even Jim can't say that Trey Lance is a top 5 quarterback.
Well, not yet.
That's true. That's true.
Give us some time. Come on.
Why did I confuse Justin Field and Trey Lance? I don't know. It's just leave it in. It's
because
fine.
neither of them are thrown off decently in the NFL so far. I'll keep this really simple. Do you know what? The 49ers did brilliantly last season whilst having mediocre to bad players at the most important position in football. They will be a lot better next season. Simple as that.
Okay, Finn?
There we go. Yep. No, I think the as painful it is to say, the real boost, or not boost, but the real positive from them was the resilience, the fact that they kept losing players through injuries. And like Punk said, the next man will just come in and pick up where things were left off as if nothing had changed. And so a lot of the time, yes, they didn't have the sort of the full strength team out, but looking at how they were playing and the scores they were putting up, you wouldn't necessarily, based on that side of things, realise. I think that was the real big thing for them. Obviously, they're going to be injuries you can't plan, but that would be a big concern. But once they get a fully fledged QB that stays fit for the season, I think they'll be absolutely flying. Obviously, again, injury didn't help, but a worry I would have as a Niner would be the fact that in the championship game, after Purdy got injured, they just seemed to lose their heads and start giving away stupid little penalties, and just seemed to throw the game as well. Obviously, it would have been a big loss to lose your QB that carried you there, but stupid penalties came in.
They did have Josh Johnson coming in at quarterback, so it's not too much of a shock.
I mean, to be fair, they had Christian McCaffrey coming in at quarterback, so
this is also
They still had the league's stingiest defense though, and they've now got 11 picks in the draft, or they're not picking until the 3rd round, so that's going to take a while. They've already brought in Javon Hargrave, a defensive tackle from the Eagles, quarterback Sam Darnold from the Panthers on a 1-year, $4.5 million deal, and defensive end Cleveland Farrell from the Raiders because. Well, why wouldn't you? They've lost Mike McGlinchey, right tackle, to the Broncos for $87.5 million, 5-year deal. Quarterback Jimmy G's gone to the Raiders for 3 years at most, and defensive end Sam Abraham to the Colts on a 3-year, $24 million deal. So they've lost some big pieces. Lost D'Amico Ryans, obviously defensive coordinator. That's going to be big. It's going to be difficult, I think, to keep this thing going into next year. But that's just me.
I mean, every year we were always talking about how many 49ers players get injured. All they need to do is keep everyone fit next year, and they're already better than they have been in prior years to that. So, and with the amount of draft picks they got, they can refresh that entire. They can package something up and go and get someone big. There's no issue with that.
Let's move on then to the second team in the division, and that was the Seattle Seahawks. I will just do my bit first, Finn, before I let you kind of go on to it, because obviously,
I don't know, jumping at the bit there.
Finn is a Seahawks fan, so he will be the first one to speak after me, and that's because I get to go first. And so. Well, who saw this coming? A team that went 7-10 last year, traded away their Super Bowl winning quarterback, and were having a summer QB battle between Geno Smith and Drew Lock. Ended up going 9-8 and making the playoffs on some great performances on both sides of the ball, as Geno looked like a veteran starting quarterback, and rookies Tariq Woolen at corner, Charles Cross at tackle, and Kenneth Walker at running back all hit the ground running. Best game where they swept the Rams and the Cardinals, which was great. But I think the Week 7 win at the Chargers was their best. Marquise Goodwin and Kenneth Walker had 2 touchdowns each, including a 74-yard highlight play from Walker. If Austin Eckler hadn't got a late consolation touchdown, the score would have been a lot worse than 37-23 that it ended as. Worst game? Well, they did run out of steam / into a wall with the wildcard game in San Francisco, but the Week 14 game at home to the Panthers, down 17-0 early. They battled back to a 3-point game, but allowed Carolina to run all over them and get the win despite Sam Darnold throwing for just 120 yards. That's the quick summary of the Seahawks. But Finn, as it's your team, mate, talk to us about what's happened this year.
Yeah, I mean, overall, can't complain one bit about the season. If you would have said at the start of the season you'd be making the playoffs, I probably would have laughed in your face and told you to jog on. So really, really impressed with how things went. I'd even argue that one of our best games was, sorry to bring this up, Dave, but the first game against the Broncos. I think that really set the tone for the season. No one was expecting anything. No one was expecting us to do anything all season. Particularly after losing Russell Wilson, who then came to us in the first game, but to put up 3 stops in the red zone and come away with a victory in that game, I think really set the tone and made people not then doubt everything, but understand actually there is a bit of a team there. Really impressed with the rookies this season as well. I think they absolutely shone, and at points really carried the team and carried the season forward. So yeah, overall, really, really proud, and then happy that again, thanks to the fantastic bit of business that was the Wilson trade, picking nice and early in the draft as well. So all in all, can't complain.
Overall,
I'm not sure the Broncos game was the big one for you, because you won the game and no one expected you to win, but you beat a bad Broncos side 17-16. Fine,
You weren't a bad Broncos side at that point.
No,
At that point, everyone was still talking about
it sets the tone for the season, doesn't it?
Well, you set the tone by then. You set the tone by then going next week and losing 27-7 to the 49ers, then losing to a bad Falcons team 27-23.
No, but I know you're a bit salty still about this, but this was the first.
No, not salty. I'm saying your
I'm siding with Finn.
I think your big game is going.
That first game of the season, the Broncos were being touted like the Raiders, like the Chargers, like the Chiefs, as being in the best division in football with one of the best teams in football. For Seattle to bring them back down to earth with a massive bump like that, I think is huge. And exactly what Finn says, it sets the stall out for the rest of the season. All they've heard in the offseason is the Broncos are going to be really good. The defense is great. Russell Wilson's there. They're going to put up loads of points. So for that Seahawks team to walk in there, they didn't know Russell Wilson was washed up at that point. I think
probably knew after the first quarter. Listen, the issue, I think the problem is they won that game and they were significantly the better team. There's no doubt about that. But then it was a loss to the 49ers, who were moving off. They were moving on to their backup quarterback during that game. Then it was a bad Falcons team. And what I'm saying is it's the game afterwards that I think is the big momentum. And that's where they put 48 against the Lions, a decent Lions team at that point as well, a free scoring Lions team. And then it was a win a week or so later where they only allowed the Cardinals to score 9, then beat the Chargers, then won after that, then beat the Cardinals again. I think that was the momentum game rather than the one at the beginning of the season where they beat, although a highly touted Broncos team, a bad Broncos team.
It wasn't a coincidence that was the first game on the schedule. So then the schedulers knew what they were doing on that one.
100%.
Everyone wrote the Seahawks off at the beginning of this season.
I agree.
The Seahawks had a tremendous year. I think Kenneth Walker has probably turned into my second favourite running back to watch in the league after Josh Jacobs. The man is just pure power. He takes defenders on, he smashes through them, he does everything. He's really fun to watch. I think he helped Geno a lot because, of his emergence, it helped Geno.
Takes the pressure off,
having to throw 35, 40 times a game.
Someone to rely on, isn't it?
Exactly. It's that nice balance between run and pass. I think Seahawks next season could be bigger and better, to be honest.
They've got 10 picks. They've already brought in Draymond Jones from the Broncos at defensive end, free safety Julian Love from the Giants, defensive end Jerron Reed from the Packers, and Devin Bush from the Steelers at linebacker. So lots of big moves already in free agency, and they got, like I said, the 5th overall pick, 20th, and 37th.
Draymond Jones, you will love. He's just disruptive from the middle. He is a very, very good. You will love him.
On to the third team. And it's not easy to go back-to-back with Super Bowl wins. It's not uncommon to have a bit of a Super Bowl hangover after winning the big one, where teams are split up and motivations are harder to get going. But it's rare for a team to palindrome their season records, yet that is what the Rams ended up doing. With no OBJ and no Von Miller at the start of the season, it only got worse as Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford got injured at mid-season. While Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald seemed checked out while staring at their new ring, Bobby Wagner didn't seem to move the needle either. Best game where there's only 5 to choose from and no good teams were beaten. There was a 1-point comeback win over the Raiders when Baker Mayfield had been in the building for 4 days, but they did put up a 50-burger in Week 16 when they took the Broncos apart in a 51-14 win. Cam Akers scored 3 rushing touchdowns and Russell Wilson got picked 3 times, including an 86-yard pick 6. Worst game? Well, there aren't many good ones, obviously, but because they lost Stafford and cut by week 10, I'm not including anything after that, so I picked the week 4 loss at home to the Cowboys. They failed to score in the second half and lost to a Cowboys team that was being quarterbacked by Cooper Rush. So don't say I'm saying it just because it's Dak Prescott. It wasn't him. So let's start with Dave, shall we? What do you reckon about the Rams season and what the hell do they do now?
I think destroyed by injuries. When you lose Matt Stafford and you're coming in with, what was it, John Wolford and eventually Baker Mayfield. It's always going to derail your season somewhat. You're absolutely right. The biggest win was Christmas Day against the Broncos. Broncos pretty much gave up. Nathaniel Hackett was fired not long after that game. So in a weird sort of a way, it was probably a good thing for the Broncos too, just because it allowed the organization to immediately move
Talking about the Rams.
Yeah, the Rams will be. I think the Rams will be a lot better next season because they're kind of moving the focus onto offense. They've already, moved a lot of the cap space away from defense with the likes of Bobby Wagner going and Leonard Floyd's being cut, and the obvious move to the 49ers for what's his bloody name? I completely forgot his name now. Cornerback.
I mean, Jalen Ramsey's gone to the Dolphins.
Jalen Ramsey that went to the Dolphins.
Jalen Ramsey, yeah. I said Miami.
You said the 49ers, but doesn't matter. Carry on.
Yeah. Jalen Ramsey went to Miami. So I think there's going to be a huge shift towards talent being stacked up on the offensive side of the ball. Allen Robinson just didn't work.
Nope.
And I think it wouldn't surprise me if the identity of the team changes significantly, but it all rests on what happens with Matt Stafford, really.
I can be a little bit nice about the Rams because I think what the Rams need to do is actually go back to the drawing board and rethink their approach. Now, yes, they did the win now thing. It worked for them. Great. They now really need to kind of figure out a younger team. Now, Matt Stafford, the question marks around him and his shoulder are going to be huge because they're not in a position to be able to move up in the draft to get a quarterback. So they're either trading for one or they need to pray that he comes back fit and healthy. Everything else, I think, is touches more than massive overhaul. I just think they need to slightly tweak their approach and look to bring in younger players. So no more OBJs and Bobby Wagners, but maybe looking at those players that are coming off their first contracts, etc., etc. They need to draft better, in all honesty, and they need to come up with a bit more of an offensive game plan other than get the ball to Cooper Kupp. There were times last season where the running game was non-existent, and you just can't have that when all you've got is backup quarterback throwing to one receiver who eventually you got injured because you were targeting them so often. So I think the Rams will be better next year, but I don't think they'll be as good as they were 2 years ago or anywhere near it.
When they won the Super Bowl. No, I agree.
When they won the Super Bowl.
I think the big thing for me was the season didn't start well. Yes, obviously coming back off the back of the Super Bowl, so you've got that element of the Super Bowl hangover. But that seemed to then just slowly things, because of that, I think, started going wrong. So then, obviously, can't foresee it, but started picking up injuries here and there and lost some key players. The fact that they brought in some older players previously for like Punk said, was more of a sort of win now mentality. But I think they'll bounce back. They're a good side. Defensively as well, they're solid once they get that right. I think, and once the coordinators get their hands back on that and back to the Rams of the past, but I don't think they should be too concerned.
But yeah, 11 picks, nothing in the first round, and they're going to have to start drafting better than they used to. So
they've got nothing in the first round, but they've got 36, 69, and 77. So they've got 3 in the top 100. And if they packaged up a first round pick next year, they could very easily move into the first round if they like to Richardson or someone like that.
You won't be there. So I think you've got far more faith than I have. I don't believe they're going to do anything good next season. So that's just me. Right. So before you know it, we've already moved on to the final team. And the timer starts now. The hot mess of the NFC West, the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, they ended with one more win than the Bears and the Texans, but the Cardinals were genuinely useless this season. Like last year, they ended on a losing streak, a long losing streak, but last year they had at least already won 11 games by that point. This season it was just 4, and that led to a hacky-sack enthusiast, Cliff Kingsbury, getting booted out of the building, and GM Steve Keim jumped before being pushed. So in comes Monty Ossenfort from the Titans and Eagles defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon from the Eagles. If you've seen any video of Gannon, you'll have no confidence in next season being any better for Arizona. Best game, not easy to pick a best game as they were all bad. They only beat the Raiders in overtime thanks to defensive scores. The win over the Saints had Murray unloading at Kingsbury on the field, and the Rams win was Colt McCoy over John Wolford. So I just take the Week 4 win in Carolina. They moved away to a comfortable victory in the second half. Worst game, a season that just seemed to pick up where the last one ended. The Week 1 gut shot at home to the Chiefs, where Kansas City scored 6 touchdowns and punted just twice, must have sent alarm bells ringing for what was to come. So, Finn, talk to me about the Cardinals, because it must be nice to see them at the bottom rather than you for once.
Oh, it's lovely, yeah. It's nice that we're passing the baton.
Season they were last.
You can't let him get away with that. Come on, man.
Just baiting him.
We're not here to talk about the Steelers, are we? So I'll have to refrain. But no, it's just it's just a bit of a car crash, isn't it? Really.
Oh yeah.
I really don't even know where to and what exactly it all comes down to. But it just doesn't seem to be any team cohesion. It doesn't seem to be sort of an offensive unit going out playing for each other, and then if at least if they can't score, you could. Like a lot of teams then can rely on a defensive unit that come out and play for each other. They just don't seem to have either. And if you can't score, then at least try and stop people scoring. But they just can't seem to do that. So they've got some glimpses of talent. I think Connor showed some glimpses of what he's got. And what he's capable of, but they were very few and far between. And I think until they really pull their finger out, then they're going to be at bottom for a long time.
For me, the problem with the Cardinals last year was just purely a lack of talent. Apart from DeAndre Hopkins on the offense, and like you said, Finn, glimpses of James Conner, they had absolutely nothing. When JJ Watt retired, I was kind of glad for him, because at the end of the day, he didn't deserve to be on that Cardinals team. He should have been somewhere else that was actually a contender. I'm a little bit surprised that he hasn't come out of retirement already to go somewhere else, to be honest. But yeah, I think the Cardinals are just in massive rebuild mode now. The toddler who can shift around like he's stolen your phone for 5 minutes on a 2-point conversion.
Against some
I'm
teams.
not convinced. Well, against one team at least.
Yeah,
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced he's the answer, but they really haven't got anything else. So until they put some pieces around him, it's difficult to tell. Yes, DeAndre Hopkins is a big piece, but he did miss a lot of games last season as well.
And he's asking for a trade.
It doesn't look good for the future in Arizona. But last season really was just about as bad as it can get.
The only pieces they've got, I think, on offense that really work, or, well, not work, but are desirable, is Marquise Brown, who they traded a first-round pick for, and that hasn't really worked. Rondale Moore, I think, has got bags of talent, but that's not going to work out Arizona because he's a deep threat, and Murray seems allergic to throwing the ball early. It just doesn't feel like they've got an identity, and with reports that Kyler Murray next season is going to be injured up to and including the double-digit weeks, who do they start? What do they do? They're picking early as well, so I think there's a real opportunity for them to hit the reset button, but obviously they won't.
Well, they've tried to, but
I'd be amazed if they go quarterback. If they're even staying at 3, they've got so many holes.
They've got to move out. They've got to move out.
They've got to get out of it. They have to. There's no way they can't.
They've got eight picks in the draft. They've already brought in Kaiser White, outside linebacker from the Eagles. Holite Froholt, guard from the Browns. Thanks very much, Holite, for that.
Easy for you to say.
And wide receiver Zach Pascal from the Eagles on a 2-year deal. They've lost, obviously, JJ Watt and Zach Allen on the defensive line. Cornerback Byron Murphy was one of the very few bright sparks at corner. And guard Cody Ford's gone to the Bengals. So, weaker line as well. And the defensive coordinator, now head coach, who was trash. So... There we go. Yeah. Yeah. That is it. That is the NFC West.
The only thing I want to say about Arizona is I'm very surprised they haven't been more active in free agency. I was kind of expecting them to just be a little bit more trade happy and we'd see more news about them, but not an enormous amount has happened.
Did they have cap room? I don't know. You guys
because they're going to be losing DeAndre Hopkins. So I think Kyler Murray will be placed on IR, which means that his cap amount for those weeks will be deductible. So it's not a problem.
You've got a first-time GM. You've got a first-time head coach. You've got a not very good owner as well in Bidwell. I think it's just going to, they're stun locked. I just don't have any faith in them to actually have a plan right now. They're not going, do we take Jalen Carter or do we move out? They haven't even figured that out yet. Are they taking calls? Are they doing the right things? This is not the time to be having first-timers all over the building.
Can't be indecisive, can you? You need to make decisions, even if they turn out to be bad ones. So you need to make a decision.
Yeah. So I don't think it's going to get any better for the Cardinals. Just quickly before we wrap up then, guys, do we think there's going to be a massive change in the standings next year for the NFC West? We had the 49ers over the Seahawks, over the Rams, and then the Cardinals.
Is Matt Stafford fit in your...
Let's say no. Let's say he never plays again.
Then no. In all honesty. If Matt Stafford's fit and he is an adequate version of the old Matt Stafford, then there is a chance that there's a real battle between the Seahawks and the Rams.
That's how you can see
the
that.
The key word there is old Matt Stafford.
Yeah. He is old.
To be honest. Yeah, exactly.
He's 34, 35. If he can come in and be a shadow of him, be even a shadow of his former self, then there's the real possibility of there being a battle for second place. Let's not forget the Seahawks finished 9-8. It wasn't as though they finished 14-3 or whatever, however many games we've got this year.
My opinion, Matt Stafford is not going to turn that team around. He needs a running game. He needs receivers. There's too much that needs fixing with the Rams for them to really challenge.
They've got enough picks, which I think most of the picks this year will probably go on offense. And they've got enough picks to be able to try and sort of revolutionise that side of the ball. But Matt Stafford's done it for years. We've seen him do it with,
let's see. Les Snead is not a good GM. That's why he had to give away all his picks for free agents because he can't draft. You said about lots of picks. The Seahawks have got lots of picks as well, and they're picking 5th, 20th, 36th. They've got high draft picks, and they're already a decent team with a solid base around them. Snyder and Carroll, you've got experience there. That's a steady ship to come into. The rookie's bedded in.
If you ask
me
at this moment in time, I don't think there's any change, but I think there's a very obvious Seahawks 49ers grouping, and I think there's a very obvious Rams and Cardinals grouping. I think to me it's a 2-team division. I don't see anything other than the Seahawks and the 49ers again battling it out.
If Matt Stafford can come back, we'll obviously refer to our resident division expert in one moment, but if Stafford comes back, then that Rams team is a very, very different outfit.
What do you reckon?
I think unrealistically, I reckon we top it. Realistically, I don't see it changing.
Who's starting a quarterback for the 49ers on week 1?
Exactly.
Sam Darnold? Good luck.
No. Wow.
That's your currently set to start.
Is the thing. You base it off now, then it's... the one thing I can be certain of is the Cardinals are sticking at the bottom for a long time. I think the next team to join the top 2 party would be the Rams. I don't think it would be next season. I think they're probably a season, probably 2 or 3 seasons away. I think there's a chance that we could top it, but I think depends how we draft as well. Ultimately,
I think you're being a bit modest there, Finn. I think you're underplaying your chances. If you can jump out early with Darnold playing at quarterback for the 49ers, if you can jump out early to a 3-game lead, then by the time Trey Lance comes back in, you might already have done enough to win the division. If the Seahawks draft well in those early picks that they've got, honestly, I think you've got a really good chance of winning that division next year at the moment. But obviously, until the draft plays out, we don't know.
Well, exactly. I think basing it off now,
you're in pole position in the draft as well. You're in pole position. So, I don't see how the
pressure on you for next season, but you're definitely there or thereabouts, I'd say.
Who'd have thunk it? And there we go. That is the NFC West reviewed, autopsied, done. Next week we'll be on to the east of the NFC. That'll be fun. And until that time, obviously, check us out at thefinaldown.com, patreon.com/finaldown for all of our extra content there, including stuff that eventually becomes free. And on Twitter at FinalDownNFL, at Punk_Raider, at DenverDave30, at FStall17. So until next time, I've been Jim, that's been Punk Raider, that's been Denver Dave, that's been Finn, and thank you very much for listening.